just orange glow of smoke and fire consuming the whole lower end.
We were looking at traffic cameras, and you could see I-70 was lit up orange. So this was not a little fire.
Some folks that live in Wooldridge talking to KRCG, giving us an idea of just how massive this fire was. You look back at some of the traffic cam footage from I-70. You see this giant red glow. You go through the town today, the entire time. You're covered. I'm not even going to say it reeks. It's covered in the smell of smoke. You walk up and down the streets, and you see like appliances set outside, charred washing machines, burnt stoves, washers, dryers. State Emergency Management Agency touring the area yesterday to assess the damage and compile a report. I think one good piece of news, a lot of folks in a town that small, they are connected to the church. Church is going to be okay. It did suffer some damage. They're going to have to do some interior work to it, but it seems to be okay, and I know a lot of the folks there are happy. The church is still there. Post office is still there. Every little town. Got to have, that's your claim to fame, your little post office in a little town, and I love that kind of stuff. I lived in a town for a while in southeast Missouri called Farr, Missouri, Farrar, and I think we had a population of 64 people. You had the grain bin, and you had a general store, and you had a church and a post office, and that was town, and that was it.
Ashland has a post office. But yeah, I think yesterday too, they said maybe there's a little community center, and that was also spared. So.
And SEMA there yesterday touring the area to try to see what was going on. Brian, what's the latest that you're hearing there? I think obviously the mayor, and we're going to feature some of her comments here, but had some really neat things to say about all the folks who have come out to help over the past roughly 72 hours.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I've been in touch with State Representative Tim Taylor quite a bit. He has really kind of taken the lead on this issue in terms of coordinating things. I know that he has told me that Congresswoman Hartzler, there's a lot of folks that heard that interview, by the way, on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Congresswoman Hartzler.
You sound surprised. This is where Stephanie gets bold.
It's
of course
awesome.
They heard it.
Of course they did.
Exactly, which is awesome. So absolutely. But Congresswoman Hartzler's office heard that. Senator Hawley's office, the governor's office reached out to Representative Tim Taylor after our interview. All of them want to know, and they're gathering information. And at this point, he said it's still very too early to tell, some of the damage estimates and things like that. But the biggest thing he is emphasizing, Brandon and Stephanie, is if people want to donate to the Red Cross or to the churches or to both, and monetary donations. They don't, not so much supplies, clothes like that. It's monetary donations that they need, but there's still a lot of devastation. But he had told us on the record yesterday it was the community center, the church, and also the post office that was spared, and they're okay. However, on Randy Tobler's show, there was a contractor who called in that said there is some damage to the church.
Yeah, apparently inside the church, you're going to have to replace some pews, the organ. They're going to be needing a new organ, so we can imagine some community efforts coming forward to help the folks with the church there in Wooldridge. And I just think sometimes we think, these little towns that are kind of hidden out of plain view, we don't think about them very often. But this is not just a fire that was in a little town. There's a bunch of families that lost their homes, people that lost pets, people that have nothing except the underwear they were wearing and the shoes and really and nothing
That's
else.
it.
I go back to my child. I was fairly young. We had a house burned down in Rantoul, Illinois. My mom was stationed in the Air Force there. We had a house burned down, and I had nothing left. And what I did have, destroyed. But what I had left, it was covered in smoke, and I couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't go anywhere to wash stuff because we were poor anyway. And now, guess what? We didn't have a home, and the things we did have left, it was covered in smoke. Anything that we can do for the folks in Wooldridge, please reach out. 874-9390, 874-9390. If you know of a fundraiser that's going to be going on to help Wooldridge, let us know about it. Text us. Call in that interview with State Rep Tim Taylor, who reps that area. You can catch that. Go to Wake Up Mid-Missouri on demand. You can go to 939theeagle.com or KWOS.com. You can catch that interview. And also, you can catch podcast of the show every single day. Something that you missed, you want to go back and hear it, you go to KWOS.com or 939theeagle.com. Wake Up Mid-Missouri on demand, and you click the hour that you want. Maybe you called, we're on the show, and want to share with you. Hey, I was on Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Brian Houseworth and John Marsh and Stephanie Bell and producer Hannah and Brandon. You got to hear my phone call. Welcome into the show. We are glad that you are here. 874-9390. 874-9390. So while we're pouring over the damage through Wooldridge school shooting in St. Louis yesterday, and this is a dude, just so we're clear, and you hate the loss of life, especially with young kids. It really, it is really a waste. And I'm familiar, of course. My familiarity goes back probably 35 years with this school. We used to play them in its visual performing arts. They used to be called VAPA, Visual and Performing Arts, and we played them in baseball.
Because you went to a magnet school too, and this was kind of a magnet school, and it was combined with another magnet school.
And before that, wasn't it Cleveland, as I recall?
Cleveland High School turned into the ROTC. It was Cleveland. Okay. They went in the magnet system, ROTC. Okay. They were probably the one baseball team worse than ours because they were into visual and performing arts, and we were into law. We were the two worst baseball teams in the Magnet League. Is a former student, 19 years old, Orlando. I can't think of his last name. They've got a name. Apparently walks in.
Orlando Harris.
Orlando Harris walks in, says, I'm sick of everybody, and shoots, kills two people. Law enforcement. I want to highlight the reaction from politicians because obviously, the teachers union, they're coming out. Missouri legislature needs to act to control gun. No, you need to change lifestyles and the way people think. That's what you need to do. It's not about the guns. And you talk about whether it's crimes in certain parts of a town or whether it's a school shooting, it's not the guns. It's not the guns. It's the people. It's the environment. And people have, and listen, we see it here locally whenever there's a shooting, about once a year. Folks, for example, in Columbia, they get their signs, their picket signs, and they walk through Columbia, stop the killing now, stop the crime. It's great. Feel like you're doing something that doesn't do anything. But I want to highlight the differences in the reactions from politicians. Cori Bush, by the way, that school's in her district, 1st District in St. Louis. She's the same one. Defund the police while she pays thousands of dollars for her own personal police protection. And I don't know if you're familiar with her part of town that she represents in St. Louis. Her part of town needs more police than any other community I can think of that I've had the experience of dealing with. So she's reacting, and actually, I can't find too much fault with what she's saying. Here's some mental health resources. That's great. But I look at people, and Tashura Jones, the Democrat mayor of St. Louis, by the way, just moved up into the #1 slot for deadliest cities in America, or most dangerous cities in America. Right up there with Memphis, New Orleans, Philadelphia. And guess what all those cities have in common? I hate to point this out because it's obvious, but
they're all run by Democrats.
All run by Democrats. Tashura Jones, Democrat. Help us, Jesus. And then I want to go to people, reactions from people like Eric Schmidt. By the way, you can also we had a conversation with him last week. You can also catch that on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on demand on our website. Eric Schmidt thanks law enforcement for their quick and decisive action. Senator Roy Blunt thanks law enforcement officers in responding to this. Josh Hawley, grateful for the swift response of local law enforcement. Mike Kehoe, Lieutenant Governor, running for governor. Has he signed that paperwork yet?
Or not. There's obviously a lot of speculation that's going to happen, but it's not. Probably won't know much about that till after the election.
Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, grateful for the quick response of the St. Louis Police Department. Governor Mike Parson, St. Louis Police Department quickly arrived on scene and immediately went to the sound of gunfire to protect lives, secure the area, and eliminate the threat. All of these politicians, by the way, what do they have in common?
They're all Republicans.
All Republicans thanking law enforcement. St. Louis Today's account of the story even is quoting St. Louis police person. I think it was like 14 minutes by the time they got to call to the time that they were on scene diffusing that situation. In a school, by the way, which I think they said 7 security guards.
And that's exactly right. And the one reporter who used to be at the Post, who's now at KSDK, Christine Byers, is reporting that the police were nearby at a nearby substation. I think it was, depending on who you talk to, they got there even faster than that. They were mourning the death of a colleague or someone they knew that had committed suicide and rushed to the scene and got there. One thing we should point out about Congresswoman Bush, she did publicly give praise to, as she called it, first responders.
Good.
She certainly did, no doubt about that. But take a look at the comments in the Twitter comments at Governor Parson to basically the people on Twitter that are responding, primarily progressives, are blaming him and Republicans for the school shooting.
And that's wrong, by the way. It's not them. It's these people who, listen, anybody goes anywhere and starts shooting people, you got mental issues. The other thing, and we don't know the full story on what happened here. I do know that area where that took place, and I do know when you have people like Cori Bush involved, it's somebody's fault. And if you want to play that game, then I'll go back to what some of the greatest leaders, greatest black, I guess even Democrats, Shelby and Eli Steele. This is the father and son team. Eli still has medals hanging around his neck for his work on racial issues over the years. He's the one went to Ferguson to go do a movie, a documentary, What Killed Michael Brown, because it was racism killed Michael Brown. Shelby Steele, this man who has medals hanging around his neck for work with race relations over the years, goes there, and he's got his crew, he's got his whole team, and they got notepads and cameras and equipment, and they land in Ferguson, Missouri, and they start talking to people, racism killed Michael Brown. Right? And Mr. Steele realized racism didn't kill Michael Brown. Michael Brown's actions killed Michael Brown. Eli Steele said here on this show last year, and they, by the way, they still made the documentary, but they made a truthful documentary. Like, here's the crap that went on. He said right here, Mr. Steele said on this show, the worst thing that's ever happened for black people are Democrats and social services programs, because blacks, their mindset, according to this filmmaker, this guy who's decorated for his work with race relations, say, Democrats, here's social programs. You don't need to think for yourself. You don't need to do anything. We'll handle it for you.
Well, and I was glad to see the Republicans' reaction to law enforcement because, you know, the last, I think, major school shooting was down in Uvalde, and law enforcement got a lot of heat for not doing the right thing. And I think from what we know so far, it sounds like, you know, the law enforcement did exactly the right thing yesterday. I think we got pretty lucky that there was a lot of folks close by. And it sounds like, you know, the armed guards, although they weren't able to keep him out, you know, everything kind of went according to the plan. And that's how you hope, you know, if something tragic happens, it really goes on. I do hope, and I know those comments were early on, it does sound like a teacher was killed, and it sounds like it's at least being reported that her daughter was told that she kind of intervened to try to protect her students. And you know, I don't expect, I don't know, you know, my sister's a teacher, and it's hard to think about, you know, how you would react in that situation. But I hope folks are also thinking that teacher today, because obviously, you know, it could have been much worse.
Christopher Arps in that area. Christopher Arps from ChristopherArps.com. You see him on Newsmax TV all the time. He's actually going to be joining us 6:35. We'll get his insight since he is in St. Louis. And the other thing, I laugh at, and we don't have time here, but I've got audio from a panel. This was on Face the Nation on CBS, and they had a panel of Democrats and independent voters, and one of the things they said, the biggest problems, they mentioned schools, and then they were asked, well, what is the biggest problem in schools right now? Democrats and independents saying on this panel, I hope to highlight the audio later so you can hear what I'm talking about. They said the biggest problem, wokeness in school.
the only worn-out old donkey I'm looking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist.
Ron DeSantis last night, governor of Florida, challenging Charlie Crist, who's held all kinds of days. He's always running for something there in Florida. That is getting us into today's Daily D.C. Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
That was in response. So Charlie Crist is trying to put DeSantis on the spot, saying, hey, we know you have these ambitions for higher office. Are you going to serve a full term, or are you looking at 2024? And DeSantis never really answered. He responded very sharply, which I thought was hilarious and a good response, because I think he's not going to say anything right now. But you in the past have said, I don't appreciate folks running for an office when they know they're not going to serve the full term. Does this DeSantis stuff bother you?
So that's what I'm wondering. But I'm thinking more on a local level, and I think back to, and people like Eric Schmidt, our attorney general. First time he came on after he said he was running for Senate, first thing I said to him, Mr. Schmidt, I said, before we talk about your Senate run, we got to talk about this. I voted for you to be my attorney general for 4 years. You got to help me get past it. And man, to Eric Schmidt's credit, he sat here and he told us, listen, I get it. I understand. So he heard us and then said, this is why I've decided to run for Senate. What I wonder about Josh Hawley, he would be up for re-election in 2024 for the Senate. If Josh Hawley doesn't run for president 2024, he's going to run for re-election for the Senate, I would assume.
Yeah.
And then what would happen in 2028 when he's only 4 years into a 6-year term and the calls increase for Josh Hawley to run as president? That's what I'm thinking ahead too. I'm going way too far out there. No, and I get it. Would rather have DeSantis, but believe there's a lot of importance. If you tell somebody you're going to be in this office for 4 years, by George, you need to do it. That's my opinion.
Well, we'll see what the voters of Florida think. So they had a big debate down there last night, and today the debate of all debates that folks have been waiting on. It's Fetterman v. Oz. They'll meet tonight in debate. Of course, Fetterman had previously suffered a stroke. He will be using closed captioning during the debate. That helps him process the words that are being said, but all eyes are there. Apparently, he agreed to the debate, a couple weeks ago when the polling was much better for him. And out new this morning is a CBS poll showing Fetterman at 51 and Oz at 49. And I think Real Clear and everyone else have been showing maybe a 5-point spread. So it's narrowing. And so the question, we've talked about, are debates important? Yeah. Do they matter? This one kind of seems important.
As a matter of fact, Christopher Arps, he was on Newsmax last week. He was talking about this debate. Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com. He's got an interesting take on that debate that's happening tonight. He's going to be joining us 5 minutes from now to share with us what his interesting take was there on Newsmax. Coming up 5 minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Becky Arps, and I am so excited that you get to experience a bit of the thoughts I hear every single day. Enjoy.
Chris Arps from the website ChristopherArps.com. You see him on Newsmax TV all the time. And since he started his friendship with us here several years ago, now has even managed to bag his own radio show in St. Louis in the afternoons. I'm not saying it's because of his time on here, but I'm saying since he's been on here, was landed a pretty cushy gig at a radio station in the afternoons in St. Louis. Chris Arps, welcome to the show. I happened to see you on Newsmax earlier this week talking about previewing the Fetterman-Oz debate. And again, we talk about that Senate race in Pennsylvania. It matters. If you're newer to politics, trying to figure stuff out, here's why we talk about those races in other states. It matters to us. It matters. Control of the Senate. We need Republicans in control of the Senate. So, yes, we do pay attention to the races in Arizona, Pennsylvania, in Ohio. Because, and we pay attention to our race here. We've probably given more attention, now that I think about it. Have we? I don't think we have on this show, but I hear some talk shows based in Missouri, they've spent more time talking about Oz Fetterman than the Eric Schmidt, Trudy Bush Valentine race.
Because they're not worried about it.
I can kind of see.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that. I mean, the race here in Missouri was over as soon as Eric Schmidt won in primary. So there's more interesting races to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. In the race in Ohio, J.D. Vance, Mr. Ryan there, the race in Arizona, that Senate race, and the gubernatorial race in Arizona, fascinating things. And all of this stuff matters, but I want to start, before we get to you previewing on Newsmax TV, the Pennsylvania debate that's happening tonight. School shooting, St. Louis, 19-year-old kid was not a student there. His name, Orlando, I forget the last name, walks in, kills two people. Apparently his gun jams. Love the response from Republican lawmakers. Everybody on Twitter, from the governor to the lieutenant governor to Mr. Blunt to Hawley, all praising law enforcement. I love that. You're there. You are in St. Louis. Reaction from St. Louis regarding the school shooting, Chris?
Yeah, a tragic situation as always when we have these type of situations. And, we've had these school shootings now for the past 30 years since Columbine. And luckily, St. Louis area, metro area, was spared that until yesterday. I was glad to see a lot of the responses from the politicians and was really surprised by the Democrats, because usually when we have one of these school shootings, the first thing that they want to do is politicize it and talk about the guns are the issue. Yep. And I've got to applaud Cori Bush and Tashar Jones. They didn't go down that tack, that they supported the families and said what a horrific tragedy this was.
Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com, joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Before we go and preview the Oz-Fetterman debate, any takeaways from last night's? We highlighted one of the best parts of the debate. What was it that DeSantis said about Charlie?
Something about a worn-out old donkey.
Charlie, Chris, because he is being pressed on the 4-year term. Any big takeaways from that last night?
I think the big takeaway for me really was that Chris and DeSantis, they both agreed that the Parkland High School shooter should get the death penalty. Mm-hmm. I think that was a rare moment of bipartisanship. And I found it very funny that Chris kept asking DeSantis, was he going to run for president? And you guys just said the famous line that he said, the only old Democrat I want to put out the pasture is Charlie Crist. But other than that, I mean, DeSantis has a huge lead. He's cruising to victory, and the real thing will be how much will this help his presidential aspirations if he has a big victory.
All right.
I couldn't get that out. Sorry.
No, I got it. Well, Charlie Crist, he's an interesting cat anyway.
He's very tanned.
He's a
good tan.
He's very tanned. He's very veneer. And I say this personal dealings. I was in Florida and spent a lot of time with him during the BP oil spill. He was constantly in the Pensacola area. He's just very He's all about the cameras and all about show. That was my opinion. And he was, by the way, and he was a Republican then. He was the Republican governor of Florida, by the way, then. But he's just always struck me as veneer. He's always concerned about the next camera opportunity. He's always wanting to look good. A lot of folks accused him of having a beard. And I don't mean the facial hair, but apparently it's a term. If you're gay, then you get a fake girlfriend. That's your beard. Haven't you ever heard of that? The beard.
I've never heard of that before, but makes sense.
Yeah,
a beard. I like that.
Yeah, and I don't care about that stuff. But those were.
I just say you fronting. You see the ghetto. How you fronting, man?
You fronting. So let's go back to something you said on Newsmax TV last week regarding the Oz Fetterman debate.
I don't think Fetterman is going to release his medical records, and quite frankly, I don't think Fetterman is going to debate next week. We saw that NBC interview where he is taking time to be able to answer these questions. He has to read the question on his screen.
Of course, he's Arps. Chris, is referring to the infamous almost interview. In which then MSNBC reporter had to put up a computer for him to read the stuff, which I get. The guy's had a stroke, and I will not knock the guy for having a stroke. What I will knock is people that are going, hey, this guy seems like the man for office. I will knock somebody who openly welcomes Joe Biden to come to Pennsylvania and say, hey, listen, this guy's smart. He's good. His mind is okay. I'm the president of the United States. I'm vouching for him. I will also knock somebody who, after a major health concern, who is obviously incredibly affected by that won't say, hey, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should be doing other things like taking care of myself. You still hold with that? You think he'll cancel last minute tonight?
No, he's got a debate. You know, that clip that you played was from last Thursday, and I had said it prior weeks of that I did not think he was going to debate, especially after that NBC interview. I mean, this is going to be a 1-hour infomercial for Dr. Oz on why Fetterman should not be a senator of the United States. I mean, it's going to take him time to read the teleprompter. He's going to have to then try to formulate an answer. It's just going to be awkward, and it's just going to look very bad for him. He was in a catch-22. He had to debate, but wow, this is going to look really bad for him tonight.
Unless there's some magic all of a sudden. Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com. You see him on Newsmax TV all the time, writes for Red State. Chris Arps joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not buying that at all. If you look at any of the polls, Eric Schmidt has a substantial lead for many election cycles now. The Republican Party, especially here in Missouri, has taken over the rural areas. I can't see rural Missourians supporting a St. Louis heiress who's worth close to $500 million who supports abortion. I don't think her candidate has any viability. I think her candidacy originally was to challenge Eric Greitens if he won the nomination. It seems since he didn't, they basically have thrown in the towel. She has put in a couple of $3 million into her campaign last week, but they've run a horrible campaign for somebody that has the resources that she does.
All right, Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com. We asked her to Saturday. Stephanie Bell and I were emceeing the homecoming parade. And, hey, Trudy! Well, here's what I wanted to say. Thank God Stephanie was there. But we've reached out to her campaign 3 times. Like, hey, we'd love to have you on the show. We get it. We don't disagree. And we're not going to argue with you. We're going to let you, because there's no point in arguing. You can't argue with stupidity or insanity. Come on, let the people hear you. 3 times, and they've never responded. At least tell me no or no thank you. At least. But nothing. So in the parade Saturday, I wanted to say,
Branden wanted to say, hey, we've emailed you 3 times and you won't email us back. And I filtered that comment to, you have an open invitation to come on Wake Up Mid-Missouri anytime.
I think you guys should have just started asking her questions. Start peppering her with questions. And then videotape it. It would have been beautiful.
Even better. That probably would have been even more fun. All right, coming up, you got some other stuff on your mind, Chris? Like, what's really like this morning? Seriously, not for your work, but almost more personally. You wake up in the morning, like, what's front and center on your mind?
Well, I tell you what, if you want to get a little personal, I was actually in Columbia on Sunday. My high school wrestling coach was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it was a great ceremony with past great wrestlers and past great coaches. There was an African-American that was inducted into the Hall of Fame that was from St. Louis, who was an outstanding wrestler in college and in high school here. And met just an incredible young man. He is on the wrestling team at Mizzou. This guy won a national championship this year as a freshman. This guy is a complete stud. And I always talk about, the Gen Y and Gen Z, the millennial generation, how they want everything easy and they, don't want to take responsibility. I saw a lot of people at this National Wrestling Hall of Fame. They gave awards to a bunch of young people, including this wrestler at Mizzou. And it gives me hope for the future. You guys remember the female wrestler that went through all 4 years of high school here, undefeated, and won 4 state championships? She was there talking about her grit and determination and how she had to really strive to be a female wrestler when people were telling her she shouldn't do it, and just stood with it. So it was very uplifting afternoon, and it was really great to see my old high school wrestling coach after 40 years.
Good, and it was non-political. I love those those speeches that encourage people. Stephanie just gave one heck of a speech last week at Truman, and she was talking about always be investing in yourself. Be investing in yourself. We hear a lot of messages throughout the day, and that's one I think that we don't hear very often, and we should hear more often. I don't know if you know this about Christopher Arps, but during 2016, worked with Ted Cruz on his presidential campaign.
Best time of my life.
I want to get your reaction to Ted Cruz on The View yesterday. I can't believe this. Listen, we never talk about The View on this show until last week when Sonny Hostin gave some love to Herschel Walker. And the only reason we mention that because I think it was impactful. If I'm stereotyping who is watching The View, I think what she said could have had some sway over a bunch of housewives sitting at home watching TV, watching The View. So that's why we mentioned it. Did you see The View yesterday with your boy Ted?
You know what? I didn't DVR it yesterday, but I'll try to catch it on YouTube. But I knew he was going to be on because of this podcast. He was talking about it. All right.
Inflation in the United States has one cause and one cause only, and that is when the federal government spends too much money.
Okay.
We have seen trillions and trillions of dollars spent by Joe Biden and the Democrats. Just last year, the federal government took in $4 trillion in tax revenues.
All right, and it goes on and on and on. That's Ted Cruz on The View yesterday. He was on The View. And hecklers. And I love that because that highlights, that emphasizes, that drives home, smashes home the point. It's this mindset. It's the way a progressive thinks. Here's something I disagree with. Here's a Republican lawmaker who's sitting up there with the Whoopi and Sonny and all the other chicks up there on the thing. They don't agree. They're not, and I don't even know that they disagree with what he's saying because they don't know what he's saying because they're not listening because they're shouting. That's how Democrats as a whole handle their business. They don't listen. They don't consider what you're saying. It shout you down. Mike Pence last week gave a master class on how to deal with hecklers. He was speaking at some event at Georgetown, and these people get up and they just start walking out, which is fine. They're quiet, but then he mentions them very deftly, or people that disagree with you who just walk out. Man, he handled it masterfully. Ted Cruz on The View yesterday talking through the hecklers. It was amazing. And Chris Arps, by the way, he's here every Tuesday. You see him on Newsmax TV all the time. He has his own afternoon radio show in St. Louis. Chris, since you missed it, I'm going to give you like the one part that people at work will be taught. So when you get into work, well, I know you don't have a job. You host a radio show, thank goodness. But you and
that's not a job.
It's not. I come and play every morning. They put a little bit of money in my bank account twice. It's great, man. But this is the money shot, I think, of The View yesterday with Ted Cruz.
A lot of folks in the media that try to, anytime a Republican is in front of a TV camera, try to say the election was fair and square and legitimate. You know who y'all don't do that to? You don't do it to Hillary Clinton, who stood up and said Trump stole the election.
Storm the Capitol. They didn't try to kill my
Stacey
former
Abrams, who said that the election was stolen. They sat here and said it was illegitimate, and you guys were fine with it. Okay, so it's illegitimate when Republicans win, but not when Democrats win.
No, here's the thing.
All right, Chris, you get the point?
Yeah, I do get the point. For someone who had the opportunity to be with Ted Cruz for 3 months on the campaign trail in 2016 and get to know him a little bit, I'm not saying we're ace booms or anything, but I'm telling you, Ted Cruz relishes this type of stuff of being able to confront liberals because he's a super intelligent guy and he knows he will run circles around any arguments that they try to give him. So he relishes that stuff. He loves it. And I tell you what, and I've been in politics a long time, and I've seen the behind the scenes of all of that. Whoopi and all the three women there on The View act like they hate Republicans, totally revulsive people. But I bet you when the lights were off and the cameras were down, that they were just as nice and as gracious to Ted Cruz as they can be. I've seen that so many times. A lot of that stuff is an act for the cameras and for their audience and for their members to be like that. But I bet you they were very kind and courteous to Ted Cruz.
Chris Arps is not lying to you right now. Chris Arps, Christopher, seriously, you're right. That stuff happens. Chris Arps, ChristopherArps.com. You see him on Newsmax TV. All the one of the things Stephanie and I, we might cover this at 8:10. I think it's a fascinating topic. We were talking about DeSantis asked in his thing last night by Charlie Crist, hey, would you commit to a full 4-year term if you're elected governor? Of course, the thing there is 2024 presidential election. We got you wondering about Hawley when he's up for re-election in the Senate in 2024. Does he go for re-election and then bail out prior to the presidential election of 2028 to run for senator? But Stephanie brought up an interesting idea. 5 seconds, Chris, yes or no. Josh Hawley is a vice presidential candidate?
No.
10-4. Chris Arps, we love you.
See you guys.
All right, the lone conservative councilman from Columbia is leaving.
And I'm sure that there is some, but the idea that it's like this unanimous opinion that this is the way to go is not true. So the thing that does kind of irk me a little bit is when these organized campaigns of to drive people out in support of an idea kind of bleeds over into saying, oh well, this is obviously what everybody thinks, therefore it's the only reasonable solution.
And that was one of the reasons we've always enjoyed working with Fifth Ward City Councilman in Columbia, Matt Pitzer. We enjoyed working with him and that was it? I think they were showing up at the meeting and somebody saying, and everybody in my ward, they're all talking about the homeless and what it's happening in the schools and the businesses. And we questioned this woman. Well, then why don't you do something instead of just talking about it? If indeed that many people in your ward are talking about homeless, why don't you all get together and undertake some kind of private effort to help instead of asking to take money out of mine and Stephanie's wallet to pay for a homeless shelter? Matt Pitzer was on the show the next day to react to that. Now, Fifth Ward City Councilman Matt Pitzer joining us here on the show now. Why are you leaving, man? He's not resigning. He is not running for re-election. This bums me out for several reasons. But I want to ask you first, why have you decided to not run for re-election?
Well, good morning, Branden. So, I was elected almost 6 years ago, and I promised that I was going to deliver on a series of infrastructure improvements in the Fifth Ward. Improving Nifong Boulevard, several other projects, build a new fire station, focus on the city's budget, get the kind of fiscal house in order. Focus on priorities like public safety. We've added 38 positions to the police department, 22 positions in the fire department over my 6 years. And I just look at it and I say, okay, what does the future hold? And I just think that, this form of government that we have, it works best when you have like this new influx of new ideas and new energy coming in. So I've, fulfilled a lot of the things that I set out to do. And I just think it's time, and I think that my ward and the city will be best served by somebody new coming in with new ideas that voters can weigh in on and move in that direction.
Well, I appreciate your words, and I believe you to be sincere, but isn't it really because of people like Pat Fowler and don't answer that question, City Councilman Matt Pitzer decided. But that's what you say. And you have done a lot in your time, and I appreciate you saying, listen, when I go in, I want to do this, and now I've done that, and I've gone out. And you said you believe that personnel on a city level, it should always, we need a healthy turnover. But I'm trying to, Betsy Peters, isn't she about the only person that was there when you were elected?
Yeah, she is. And so we've had a lot of turnover. Carl Scala was there for about 12 years, I think. And Roy beat him out this summer. So there's been, quite a bit of turnover. And that's the one thing that I kind of, thought about and gave me a little bit of pause. There's got, ideally there would be, a little bit of a balance. My whole first term, there was no change. There were no new members. And then everything has kind of, accelerated here over the last couple of years. New mayor, new city manager who's been there for about a year. He's been with the city for a little bit longer than that, but in his position for about a year. So that's the one thing that, I really thought about. And look, I know you've had Mayor Buffalo on a few times, and, she's got a lot of energy and a lot of passion for what she's doing. And I believe in her, completely. And, I feel comfortable with her leadership in the way things can go.
Fifth Ward City Councilman Columbia Matt Pitzer not seeking re-election. And here's why this, in my mind, at least, is such a big deal. Now, they're nonpartisan office, but we know the real story. Matt Pitzer, I would say, basically the lone conservative, the much-needed lone conservative on the city council. Sometimes Betsy Peters can be pretty reasonable. But is there some of the reasons, and I want you to be as honest as you can be, just like, when we see each other at the gym.
Give me a
that's
break.
Just a humble brag. That's just an excuse that's a humble brag, as Stephanie and Hannah likes to call it. But you're always honest with me, so I want some honesty. Is some of why you're leaving? Is it some of the person, especially, and I won't say any names, but there's especially one member on the city council, and this is not just me. It seems to be generally shared by anybody who remotely follows local politics. A lot of it has to do with one person that is now on the council. And I won't phrase it this way, but does some of it have to do with the personnel that's on the council? Like, I just can't deal with this craziness.
Well, I'll say this. So there's a lot of parts of this position that I love. Being involved in the community, being able to go out and meet with all kinds of different people and have discussions on all kinds of issues. And the things that I love are being able to sit down and be like, all right, here's an issue, here's a problem. Here are some different opinions and viewpoints. How can we actually solve it? And that is I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. But there are parts of our process, the way that's set up, that are just really, they can just really, sort of grind on you over a period of years. And a lot of that's important. I mean, it's the public meetings and all the way the way things are set up. But it takes a lot. I mean, it does. And somebody said to me a while ago, over the summer, I think, they said, you got to think about how many hours of your life do you want to dedicate to doing this? And so I thought about that and I started counting some of the hours, and I was like, oh my God, this is like a lot of hours. And, I've got a whole career, a professional career outside of government and politics. I've got, family and all those kinds of things. And so, yeah, that's all part of the equation.
And you need more time to shock the biceps at the gym. City Councilman Matt Pitzer, 5th Ward, Columbia, announcing he's not running for re-election.
Branden, thank you. Councilman, thank you for your service, and thank you for always coming on with Branden, Stephanie, and I, and Hannah after almost every council meeting. I think those recaps have been very helpful, I think, to us, but I think to the listeners as well. And I second what Branden said. I mean, in terms of daily life, people want to talk about President Biden or Governor Parson or whatever, but in terms of the daily life impact, what affects our daily lives, there is no question, ands, ifs, buts about it. What happens in the city and the CPS, biggest impact of daily lives by far. So it is a huge deal. I want to ask you about the Nifong project, because that's not controversial, but that was a huge issue. And you talked about the intersection improvements in the wards, $15 million in major intersection improvements. I drove through there. Drive through it, a couple times a week. But basically, Nifong over there by the Walgreens and the Boone Health, it took a long time, but it really looks good. But it took a while. Perhaps it had to do with the right-of-way. How important was that project? Because before that was done, you'd be sitting in traffic. It would take forever to get through there.
Yeah, I know, and I'm through there multiple times every day, and I think about that a lot. Like, I can't even believe that this used to be just like a 2-lane road through here, with how much traffic and how much how many people are going through there every single day. So yeah, that was a huge improvement, and a lot. Look, again, the way our government has set up these big major projects that there's this huge investment of tax dollars. There's a whole process to go through on those, and planning and having the public input and gathering the funding for it and all those things. So there's just sort of a natural lag in getting all that actually done. There's another project that is going to be moving forward in terms of improving Forum all the way north. It's 2 lanes south of the bridge, or it's 4 lanes. South of the bridge and 4 lanes north of the bridge, but then there's a 2-lane section down by Wilson's Gym, where Branden always is, and then across the creek there, and that bridge across the creek needs to be. So that's like another major project that's coming forward here over the next couple of years, and so that's something that I would say is needs to be a priority of whomever wants to follow me.
Back to the grind of being on the city council. You get a stipend, I think, of $600, maybe $700 a month. Takes a lot of your time. And not only do you have your own professional career, you sit on the boards of various different things in town. You have a family too, and usually these city council meetings, Monday nights, twice a month, right about 5 hours. They start at 7. You're talking midnight. You're talking about somebody who's been at work all day and all that stuff. What was your family's reaction when you said, hey, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. How did they react to you telling them?
They're like, well, you got to find something else to do. We don't want you back in office.
All right. Fifth Ward City Councilman Matt Pitzer, not seeking re-election, and I get it. You know, we do something. We get all these things. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. And then we do it for a while, and then we realize, okay, so I've done that, and right now, this just is not for me anymore. And I think I give you some kudos for being able to keep your priorities straight. Hey, there's the family, and there's also my professional stuff. And when I look at the hours and what I'm doing, yes, I do love to be of service, but it's time for somebody else to be of service. Final question before we let you go. Roy Lovelady, elected after that runoff re-election. I think just a remarkable story. Mm-hmm. And you think, listen, I'm going to tell you, here we are 14 days away from the election. You think your vote doesn't matter. We'll take you back to April of 2022 when one vote would have mattered in that race between Scala and Roy Lovelady. I think it's a remarkable story. And Roy Lovelady's been on the show not quite as much as Matt Pitzer has, and this is his take, his description, black, gay, cross-dressing hairdresser, Roy Lovelady. Been on the show several times. I haven't been able to see that he's gotten his feet under him yet in the city council meetings. I think he's only been in two at this point. What have your personal dealings with him been like? How do you see him, Mr. Pitzer?
Roy's a great guy. I mean, I've talked and met with him, a few times. He's getting his feet under him, and he, completely recognizes that, and that's something that I really appreciate about him. I mean, he came to me on something and said, "What is this all about? Like, I don't get what's going on." I appreciate that when you know what you don't know, kind of deal. But he's got a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and I think he's going to bring a lot of good ideas, and that background that you described, and he brings maybe a different perspective than we haven't had. And is able to lend that voice. So, so I look forward, so hopefully I can, stay in touch with him and still be friends or become friends if I'm not friends with him. But yeah, I really admire and respect him, quite a bit. And that was a crazy deal. You're right about your vote mattering. Carl had a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of experience, but it's one of those things where I, kind of along, what I'm thinking, in terms of, just continuing to add, new voices and new ideas, to the process is, winds up benefiting all of us.
All right. City Councilman Matt Pitzer, 5th Ward in Columbia, announcing he's not running for re-election. Thank you for your time on the show, and we'll chat again before you're out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got a few more months I'm going to be sticking around, so you'll have to deal with it.
And I can't wait because now you've got nothing to lose. And I feel like you have always been honest, but now, Mr. Pitt, you got nothing to lose, and I want you to lose it here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next time at the gym. Coming up a few minutes from now, What's Hot with Hannah? What do you have for us this morning, Hannah?
Well, I know I've been talking a lot about McDonald's lately and What's Hot with Hannah, but I've got one more story from McDonald's that has the internet up in arms.
All right, and also coming up, want to talk about Thorpe Gordon Elementary School in Jefferson City. It's going to become a STEM school. And Aaron Hedlund, research fellow at St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, economics professor at Mizzou, worked with Trump for a while. Good morning, 7:25-ish, which means it's
It's 7:27.
time for What's Hot with Hannah.
Okay, this is the third time I've talked about McDonald's just in the last couple weeks, but they've made headlines again.
So they made headlines last time because of the McDonald's Happy Meal with the adult toys in it. Then they also made news for
the Halloween buckets that they came back with for the Happy Meals. John was actually really excited about those.
John, I noticed. I got a text from Marsh one day, and usually when a news guy who's been practicing journalism for over 30 years in mid-Missouri texts you with something important, so I see a text from Marsh. I'm, what's going on? What's this? And he says, the Halloween buckets are back in McDonald's. Yeah, that was all Marsh, man.
Now, some people look forward to this McDonald's event. Like, I look forward to pumpkin spice season every year, and it's the return of the McRib. Okay, some people lose their minds over the McRib. I don't think it's that great, but whatever. But McDonald's, when they posted the McRib to their website, in the item description, it says, get one while you can because this is the McRib farewell tour.
What?
Oh, come on. Cher's been doing that for 25 years.
So, Twitter is kind of up in arms, wondering what they're going to do without their McRib. That's not that good anyways.
So did they sell out? Usually they put these things out and they're like, oh, we sold out. We're all out.
So McRibs remind me of something we used to eat at school. They kind of had like a bootleg McRib.
Yes.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like, that's just always what it has tasted like to me. But yeah, McDonald's on their website says, enjoy our famous pork sandwich as if it's your last.
How about that?
It's kind of cryptic from McDonald's.
I'll believe it when I see it. You know what else sold out? And I hate to bring this up. I am not a fan of these. The GMC Sierra Denali sold out in 15 minutes. What's different about this vehicle that made it sell out within 15 minutes? Well,
gas prices.
I was going to say it's an electric vehicle. These electric vehicles, man, they're selling them left and right. Sold out after 15. And I am not a fan of electric vehicles. Don't like the fact the government is trying to squeeze your hand, trying to twist your arm into buying these things. But that's the way the manufacturers are going. This sold out in 15 minutes. Aaron Hedlund, research fellow at the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. Also, with the Show Me Institute, he's joining us. What would Republicans do in Congress to help fix the economy? He's here 5 minutes from now.
I will place economic stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. This will mean difficult decisions to come.
Oh, that never sounds good, whether it's coming from a government leader or your employer. If your boss comes to you and says, hey, we got to be a little bit more economically responsible here, and this is going to hurt. Typically, it means bad things are coming. That is Rishi Sunak. He is the new UK Prime Minister, and I want to kind of compare that to what's going on back home. I want to bring in Aaron Hedlund, research fellow, St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, worked within the Trump administration, economics professor at Mizzou. He is with the Show Me Institute. As a matter of fact, we're teaming up for a big event with the Show Me Institute coming up the day before the election, Monday the 7th. But I want to start here, Aaron. So they're talking about tough choices. That's what we got to do. Back home, it's the economy, stupid. 14 days from now, we're going to the polls. I'm guessing, hoping a record number of people are going to be voting for Republicans nationwide because it's the economy, stupid. Let's say this happens. We have this big red wave. They're all sworn into office in January. They get there. What do they do? What can they do? A new Congress under Republican leadership, what would they do to help the economy? What steps could they take?
Hey there. Well, thanks for having me on. I would say really the biggest thing that a new Congress could do is put a brake on what's been going on over the past year and a half. I mean, obviously I'd like to see them go further, but really the first step is we need to stop the overspending. We need to stop all the rhetoric about more and more tax hikes. We need to kind of send a message to the administration that the constant increases in regulations are crimping the ability to produce, because really these are the factors that have been driving inflation to 40-year highs over the past several months.
So we're, I guess, staring down another increase by the Fed, and they're saying, well, we don't, I think a recent article said there's not enough data to really change that outcome. What will that mean for our economy and for inflation?
Well, the first thing we're seeing get impacted by all these rate hikes is, of course, the housing market. I mean, mortgage rates now, I think a year ago, were still around 3%. Now they're basically 7+%, and that's having a tremendous impact on the housing market. You no longer see tons and tons of bidders putting in kind of prices above list. So that's going to kind of hurt the housing market. But, of course, rents and housing costs are one of the largest drivers of inflation, so that should have an impact to bring it down. The thing is, there's always a delayed effect from rate hikes throughout the economy. So it's going to take some more time to see these things play out. And really, even though rates are much higher than they used to be, I mean, the federal funds rate is around 3% right now. If you take that and you subtract inflation, you're still negative, right? So that's one thing economists look at is what they call the real rate of the real interest rate, which is take the interest rate, subtract inflation. If that's still negative, there's more progress that the Fed needs to keep pushing on the pedal to get rates up so inflation can come down.
So there was a recent article in The Hill, and they were, like Brandon was talking about, if Republicans get control, there is a number of options that they can do. And they listed out pullback on spending, dealing with the debt ceiling, energy, supply chain, taxes. Say you were elected to Congress, like what's first priority that will actually move the needle on this stuff?
Well, I think the most immediate thing I would do is tackle energy. I mean, energy has been something that people have been feeling at the pump. Of course, gas prices aren't quite as high as they were in the peak summer, but they're still way higher than they were in January 2021. I believe back in January 2021, the average gas price nationwide was about $2.30. So we're still a good $1 plus above that. Yep. And there's a lot of headwinds right now. So under the Trump administration, the administration pursued reforms to the permitting process to make it easier to get permits. And what we saw is the U.S. became energy independent for the first time in decades. We were kind of net exporters. And what we've seen, unfortunately, under the Biden administration is this almost religious commitment to their kind of climate activist agenda. And it's done nothing to improve the environment, but everything to raise prices. So we need to kind of have oversight hearings and really try to push the administration to go back to those reforms. And then, on the spending side, we need to immediately stop the overspending. I mean, this is adding gas to the fire, which is really, the reason we're barreling towards the possible kind of worse recession is because of inflation. It's completely artificial. We don't need to be talking about recession, but the reason we're doing it is because of the inflationary overspending.
And that gas we're throwing on the fires, $3.69 a gallon. So let's hurry up and be done with it. Aaron Hedlund, economics professor at Mizzou, research fellow at the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, also with the Show Me Institute. We'll have details coming up. Big event you can take part in coming up Monday, November the 7th, Zimmer Radio Group headquarters. Aaron Hedlund hanging out with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Yeah, for sure. We've already had 2 quarters of declining GDP. And then the question is, which is historically and traditionally the definition of recession. And in fact, the director of the National Economic Council, the current director under the Biden administration, Brian Deese, years past referred to a recession by that very same definition. But unfortunately, the administration is really great at twisting words and definitions to fit their own priorities. So we've seen them when they were passing the infrastructure bill a year ago. They were pushing for an even larger infrastructure bill that dealt with things that, basically social spending. And what did they do? They called that human infrastructure. And then they passed the Inflation Reduction Act a few months ago, which does the exact opposite. It's more spending, more tax hikes. So we already know they like to redefine things. I think the real question is, what do we see the second half of this year and early next year? And unfortunately, more and more signs point to continuing or perhaps even worsening recession.
So I think one thing that frustrates me about the economy and inflation, with COVID policies here in Missouri, we could kind of insulate ourselves and make our own decisions at the state level, which allowed us, more than other places, I think, to keep some things open. With, high gas prices and inflation, it feels like, as a state, we, have very little control. I know with your involvement with the Show Me Institute, what can our state legislators be looking at as they go back in January to try to help, folks on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, as you alluded to, Missouri can't bring the inflation rate down. That's something that really has to happen nationwide, and federal policies are pretty dominant there. Unfortunately, we have moved very far from the kind of limited government vision of the Constitution, where the states kind of take more of the lead on policy and the federal government's more in the background. We're very much the flip of that. But we're not powerless to make things better for Missourians. And one issue that Missouri has had to deal with for many years now is slow growth. That's something that legislators should really be focused on, is how can we compete with states like Tennessee, Texas, Florida, that have both been pro-freedom, and I think Missouri has been pro-freedom. We haven't been locked down intensively like places like California and New York. But we could be a lot more bold on the spending and tax front. We could be more pro-growth on that front. And the key with growth is, what does that mean? Well, if we can make ourselves a more attractive state in terms of lower taxes, less penalty of income, lower regulations, more school choice, then what that means is more businesses come here, more businesses are creating jobs, people can get larger paychecks to help counter the negative effects of all this inflation.
As a matter of fact, Smith & Wesson, who sends, from what I understand, every gun in America manufactured by Smith & Wesson, it comes through Columbia at a facility off of I-70 in Route Z. Because, the way I understand it, county leadership in Boone County didn't create a good enough environment for Smith & Wesson. They are moving to Tennessee. I want to circle back to something you said really quick before we let you go and talk about our big event coming up the day prior to the election. There's a political consultant based here in Missouri. His name is Rodney Boyd. Always enjoy chatting with the guy. We had several conversations with him earlier this year when we were talking about redistricting and the maps. We want a 12-0 map or a 6-2 map, that whole discussion. But he said one of the things that you just said, which is why I'm particularly interested. He said, we're worried about redistricting. What we really should be doing, and he would say this over and over, we should be more concerned with growing the state of Missouri. We need more people here. So his argument was going beyond redistricting, but just we need more people here. And now I'm hearing you kind of say that. How important is bringing more people to Missouri, not just to politics, but to the economy of Missouri?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of reminds me of the very disappointing legislative session last spring when it seemed like there were more people concerned about political careers than about actually delivering.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, that special session, we did get some major tax reductions. The key was when you get more population growth, then that, of course, brings tax revenues, which allows us to not have a scarcity mentality. Like when you have a scarcity mentality, then everyone comes out looking to protect their corner of the pie instead of growing the pie. And really what we have to think about is growing the pie, because that allows us to, again, have reductions in taxes. It allows us to ensure that our schools are delivering high quality, which, by the way, is a massive challenge. Just the other day, we found out that nationwide test scores dramatically declined. So that's, again, these are issues that we need to solve. And for people who are already here, when you have a pro-growth state, it means more opportunities for them. It means that more jobs opportunities that they can either switch to, or they can get higher pay increases because their employer knows that there's other opportunities that the workers can move to. That's really what we need to be doing, and other states have done it, and there's no reason why we can't do it too.
All right, Aaron Hedlund, before we let you go, you're doing a big event. We're excited. The day before the election, Monday, lunchtime, Zimmer, Worldwide Radio Headquarters. What are you guys going to be covering on that day?
Well, we'll be talking about some of the topics we've just been discussing today, but get more in depth about it. The state of the economy, inflation, the housing market, what it means for the country, what it means for the state, what it means for everyday Missourians. So look forward to a good discussion.
And we've got a link posted to that event, I think, on our Facebook page. It's also on the Show Me Institute page, which is showmeinstitute.org, if you want to register.
Aaron Hedlund. Anything else? By the way, I always appreciate when you come on because you explain a lot. Because, like, I can listen to the Gary Nolan Show weekdays at 9, and Gary is so smart, I don't always understand what he's saying. I appreciate you distilling this stuff down so that folks that are even newer to politics listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning, they go, oh, yeah, I get what Aaron's talking about. We'll chat with you again real soon.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
All right, Aaron Hedlund. Show Me Institute coming up 5 minutes from now.
Bad news.
It was also Kamala's birthday. She turned 30. And happy birthday to a great president.
Happy birthday to President Kamala Harris. I don't think that's the first time he's referred to the vice philosophizer as the president. I think that's happened more than once over the years. I don't know. Maybe it's a brain fart, or maybe he really does think she's president, or maybe that's what they're saying when he goes from one press conference where he said one stupid thing and he's on his way to go and say the next stupid thing. And the guys in those limousines, the Secret Service limousines, I always imagine they're like, you ever around somebody and like they're just bad news and you just like don't want to be seen. Stephanie's laughing because she knows a lot of these people in her life. But that person, like, you don't want to be around them. You don't want to be seen talking to them.
Sure.
I imagine that's what it's like in the Secret Service limos for Joe Biden. Like, even Secret Service agents are like, hey, man, just don't talk to the guy because he's bad news. Called Kamala, the president. That's happened before. But this is a little bit more significant.
You don't have one of those loans, you just get 10,000 written off. It's passed. I got it passed by a vote or two.
Huh?
Yikes.
That did not go through Congress, which is one of the big rubs. I got it passed by a vote or two. Look at me. No, you just did it. And then you've been sued several times, and now you have one judge saying, yeah, we're going to pause this thing right now while we take another look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't get it passed by a vote. What are you doing, man? And listen, even if we quit knocking this guy, who's voting for him? And who is that like 29% of America that thinks he's doing a good job? Blows me away. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's John Marsh, producer Hannah, Stephanie Pell, Brian Houseworth. I am Branden Rathert. Marsh, you want the good news first or the bad news first? That's what give me the bad news first, because I'm the eternal pessimist. No, I'm the eternal optimist. I like to keep things positive. Hannah, you said, what do you like first?
Usually the bad news.
Steph?
Bad news.
All right. Bad news. Arizona tourist stuck 200 feet underground in the Grand Canyon. Apparently an elevator breaks. See, I hear stuff like that, and I'm thinking about that next time I'm at Merrimack Caverns. Brian, remember that story that you and Marsh and Hannah and Stephanie were talking about where folks got caught 200 feet below ground at that cave? Right about the time I'm in Merrimack Caverns, that's when I start thinking of stories about like this, right? But there's good news.
They didn't like fall down there. They were purposefully staying at like a bougie hotel that was underneath the earth.
They have a hotel in a cave in Arizona at the Grand Canyon. And so they're done, I guess, hanging out in the hotel. And somebody says, oh, my God, the elevator's broke. And the people in the hotel are like, how cool is this?
Right.
Now we're right? But the headline is Arizona tourist stuck 200 feet underground in Grand Canyon caverns after elevator breaks. And so I'm going and I'm rushing to read it. Oh, my God, the Grand Canyon, 200 feet, fell into a cave. Timothy, what? Oh, it's a hotel.
Yeah, and they're saying there's like 20 flights of stairs that you can get out, but the people that are stuck are people who have medical conditions who, can't get out. If I had work the next day, I also have a condition that I can't leave a hotel for another week. Sorry.
Like I used to tell my dad, I'm going to school. I say, Dad, I can't go to school today. I'm sick. He said, you're not sick. You're hungover. Get your rear end to school. You ain't sick. Coming up, 8:10 here on the show. I want to cover interesting question. Would Hawley consider a vice presidential run? We're looking at debate last night between Charlie Crist, Ron DeSantis. A lot of talk Ron DeSantis will run for president in 2024. Charlie Crist asked him on the stage, which, by the way, you can't do that when you're in a debate. The moderator is supposed to ask the questions. But Charlie Crist said to Ron, will you commit to serving out your 4-year term if you're elected governor of Florida? Which tells me, number one, Charlie Crist doesn't have a whole lot of confidence. If he's asking his opponent, what are you going to do if you are elected? And the way it was answered, we'll feature that coming up at 8:10 and turn it back on some of our statewide politics here in Missouri. Good morning.
And by the way, I'm coming back. I'm going to ban assault weapons again. I mean it.
Biden referring to his work back in the early to mid-'90s banning assault weapons, which he and Clinton did. I'm back. I'm doing it again. I'm going to ban assault weapons again. Joe Biden and then school shooting. And this is, it's been, you hate to see the loss of life under most circumstances, especially the loss of young life. And then when the national media starts shining the spotlight on your state, you especially go, oh, man. School shooting in St. Louis, incredibly sad. In reaction, I want to give kudos to people like Governor Mike Parson, Josh Hawley, Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, our Attorney General and Senate candidate Eric Schmidt. See Parson. Who else? Did I forget anybody in there? All these people coming out on the Twitter, and instead of getting political with stuff, saying, hey, we appreciate the work of our law enforcement.
And Ann Wagner, we should throw in as well, who lived in Jefferson City for a number of years, the congresswoman in St. Louis. She did. And also, we should point out here, Brandon, Congresswoman Cori Bush did several times at that press conference, certainly did thank the first responders and the police for immediately responding. She did that.
Did she immediately follow it with, now defund them?
Yeah, she didn't.
Okay, good.
She didn't say that. To your point, though, about the governor and Eric Schmidt specifically, the comments on Twitter towards them from their tweets.
What did people say after that? See, I just read
they're basically people on the, and people can read it. It's on the governor's Twitter page. I'm just. Basically saying Republicans caused this, lax gun policy, basically implying that he should have done more, and you're in cahoots with the National Rifle Association. I mean, those are some of the things that, it's just those are some of the things I saw. But again, Congresswoman Bush certainly did praise the first responders, and as did the mayor of St. Louis, Tashar Jones.
And what I do like about that, I consider Twitter really, I try to get on there every few months and do stuff, and I poke around. You talk about if you saw the word cesspool in the dictionary, it would have Twitter next to it. That, to me, is mostly what it is. There's some good stuff in there, but it's just so much crap. But what I do love about that stuff, when you have people like your governor, lieutenant governor, like your soon-to-be, well, you got both your junior senator and senior senator both thanking law enforcement. And then the people, well, you did this. Those people that criticize, well, your lack of gun legislation. What I do like about that is then we don't have to name call. We don't have to say, look at you, ignorant idiot. Look at you, jackass, you moron. We don't have to do that stuff. We don't have to go and name call. They don't need our help. By virtue of what you are saying on the Twitter, people know that you have no intelligence. You have no critical thinking capabilities. You have no common sense. When you say that stuff, people know that about you because people understand that this is a guy, by the way, 19 years old. His name is Orlando, had used to go to the school, and I'm guessing could be, I don't know what's going on. I also know the neighborhood where it happened, and having grown up in St. Louis, all these things that are happening, and was the kid bumped out because his last 2 years of school, because kids in St. Louis basically not allowed to go to school, at-home learning. And now we continue to see these reports that we've been hit with over the past couple of days as it relates to test scores nationwide. I mean, this isn't, by the way, sometimes test scores go down. They don't go down like this.
They're terrible. I mean, they said it's the biggest drop in math in I think ever, down 8 points. And they're saying, a couple of points means about a year of growth. And usually, if there's a 1 or 2 point drop, it's cause for significant concern. But even I think the ACT numbers came out this week, and they were just terrible.
Missouri test scores, by the way, just as bad. So this is not just a national thing and a conservative. Look at what's happening with test scores nationwide. It's happening to our kids right here in mid-Missouri. These scores are going down because of what happens in these schools, man. So it just blows me away when you have people that don't understand what's going on. They get on the Twitter. Well, it's gun policies. No, it's so. And I'm gonna stereotype, step on a ledge here. I'm going to guess what the circumstances surrounding this shooting. Maybe the kid didn't come from the best of environments, mental issues, whatever. To think it's a good idea to go into a school and walk in and shoot people, just crazy. But I have to applaud our conservative lawmakers for standing up for law enforcement. And Cori Bush, I think, by the way, and here's I a few minutes ago I said I'm the eternal optimist. I try to keep everything positive. Well, I'm going to backtrack on that because here's what I think with Cori Bush.
It's hard to keep things positive with her.
Right? Because she's saying, and appreciate the job that law enforcement did. That's that reconciliation that her and most Democrats nationwide. And when we say this stuff, we talk about Democrats. Think about this on a local level. It was the Democrat Party. So whether you're looking at a Boone County commissioner or Cole County commissioner, local races, the Democrat Party, the party of Democrats, wanted to defund the police. Think about that in these local elections, too, not just on a national level. It is the Democrat messaging. So when Cori Bush comes out in a press conference after 2 kids shot in a school in her district and says, and we thank the police, that's reparations for law enforcement. That's what that is. She's saying, hey, man, I know I crapped on you guys. So here's some compliments to make you think that I love you because I really took it on the chin when I was talking about defunding the police, and then I got it even worse when everybody uncovered the fact that I was hiring my own law enforcement, my small army of law enforcement folks to keep me safe while I wanted people here in the deadliest, most dangerous city in America, I wanted you to do with fewer police. That's what I think Cori Bush was doing. Reparations. Here you go. Here's for some bad stuff I've done over the past 2 years. Here you go.
And I have seen some state lawmakers come out this morning and talk about the teacher, because there is a teacher who died in the shooting. And specifically, this tweet said, a teacher woke up this morning planning to spend the day with her students. Tragically, she found herself standing between her students and a violent criminal. According to reports, her sacrificial action and quick police response saved lives.
Stood in front of the shooter. There is no question about that. There have been, you're exactly right about that, Stephanie. There have been some lawmakers that have suggested that there will be, I don't want to use the word gun control because I don't know the specifics of the policy, but the number of the television stations last night indicated State Representative Rasheed Aldridge from St. Louis indicates there'll be a fight in Jefferson City, a battle, in other words, in the legislature about gun issues. So we will see that. The other thing that I think is interesting, and we don't know exactly what happened there, but there are, I've seen a lot of tweets praising the coverage, but I have also seen some tweets criticizing, particularly one reporter, and who, by the way, I think is a fantastic reporter. I don't know the circumstances of it, but some didn't like the fact that some of the survivors were interviewed on camera out there. But that young lady did have, I thought that was her family with her, but I don't, again, without knowing the I think, do you know the interview I'm talking about? No, the gun had jammed.
Well, there are several things as I saw that. Number one, anytime a news outlet puts people on camera under the age of 18, I have a real issue with that, because you're supposed to have parental consent. So I have a real issue with that. I also have, which is why I'm not in journalism anymore, because I didn't like going up to say, hey, you just witnessed your best friend get his brains blown out on the second floor next to your locker room. How do you feel? Right. I didn't like doing that. Here would be... And the other, when you have somebody that dies, somebody that's famous, like we had this guy that died yesterday, and he used to be on Will and Grace a lot, was on the TV show Reba, and I forget his name, but interesting character.
Dave Davis, maybe? I can't.
Leslie Jordan?
Leslie Jordan, yeah. And somebody, they die, and then people they want a statement from the family. I would. Here's my statement. Yeah, not right now. That would be my statement to the media. Not right now. So, yes, I did pay attention. I did see that and did follow with interest the way the news outlets cover that in St. Louis. You don't do that with people under the age of 18.
And again, I probably never covered a story like that, so it's uncharted territory. But her comments were powerful. There is no doubt. And she had people with her. I understand. That's a tough one. I don't know. Without knowing the circumstances, I don't know. Yeah. But I understand certainly where you are coming from. but it was horrible. The only other point I'd make, Brandon, is that's the first time I've heard Congresswoman Cori Bush say, I mean, she did really praise the authorities. She said
reparations,
first responders, but I don't think she's somebody that's really too concerned about I mean, she's in a heavily Democratic district, so. But she did say that, and the mayor also asked for help from divine help. I mean, I think help us Jesus, I think is how she phrased it on Twitter. But she also praised the police.
By the way, Cori Bush's opponent has been on our show. Stephanie and I had the opportunity to meet him at the statewide Lincoln Days in February in St. Charles earlier this year. He's a black conservative Republican, and we have him on not because he's a black Republican. We had him on because he has some just amazing stories from the campaign trail when he goes into these neighborhoods and he's the looks he gets, like literally like people standing back and kind of like, you're a Republican? Exactly, you're right. And almost looking at him like and by the way, Shimon Jones, who's running for Recorder of Deeds in Boone County, she will share these same stories with you. But Andrew Jones would tell you, like, people were looking at almost like he was an oddity at a zoo or something. Like, oh my God, that's the reception he was getting in these neighborhoods because they have been taught a lot of black people. And Shelby Steele, the guy who did the documentary What Killed Michael Brown, he says the same thing. James, the local guy, we call him
James Gray.
James Gray. He will say the same thing.
Tim Scott.
Democrats, the worst thing to have happened to black people. They are the worst thing that have happened to black people. So when you get somebody like Cori Bush's opponent, black guy running as a Republican, people in the neighborhoods are like, but you're. And here's what's been remarkable, actually, is talking to Shimon Jones, who I would be voting for Boone County Recorder of Deeds 14 days from now. Is the stories are the same. Different parts of the state, very different offices. Their stories, Andrew Jones and Shimon Jones' stories, when it comes to campaigning to people in black neighborhoods, black churches, rap events, their stories are identical on the reactions that they get because that's what they have been taught. They don't know any better. It's like a novelty thing whenever they see a black Republican. That's the stories that we hear. Coming up, we're going to be doing Morning Bell business news, little twist. Only Stephanie Bell can give you. What do you got for us this morning, Steph?
Have you ever had a CD? When was the last time you had a CD?
Dude, you go out to my car right now.
Come on, man.
Hi, it's 8:26. Time for the Morning Bell business news with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
The Wall Street Journal talked to a retiree who lives in Dallas, and she said, "Never did I ever suspect I'd be buying CDs again." And I recall CDs as like those things maybe your grandparents gave you, like a $50 CD when you were like really young. And
when you turn 21, you'll then have $37.
Yeah, you'll have earned 0.02%. And so it just never has been a really good vehicle to store your money. But now with the markets being kind of crazy, the lead story in the Wall Street Journal today is that some banks are offering 4.5% on CDs. And, you do have to put the money in for a certain term. You get paid out at the end. These aren't just everyday CDs, so they're not available to everyone. They're typically offered, they're called brokerage CDs. So you usually have to go through a brokerage firm to get a hold of them. But again, it's kind of like guaranteed money. It's still not as high as inflation, so but it's less risky. So for folks, they interviewed one person who had a bunch of cash kind of stashed up for a new house and still wanted to kind of put it somewhere that could earn a return other than, because savings accounts anymore, you get nothing. But didn't want to throw it in the market and risk it all. And they said, hey, maybe you should consider these CDs. And I've never even thought about investing in a CD. It's not something that's like really been on my radar, but they're saying that one of the, I think they said Charles Schwab, the part of their website where people buy CDs, that website section is up 50% in a month. And that CD purchases were at an all-time low at the beginning of 2022, but they've seen a significant uptick since then. Interesting.
So I have had two, but I bet it's been 20 years since my first divorce, because that's when I lost them, was in the divorce.
Right? Weren't they the things that you would like get the certificate and then you would go put them in your safe deposit box and then you'd forget about them, right? Or something?
They were like, or like when your grandparents, I think, got you savings bond as a child.
Oh, yeah, that's what the savings bond. But CDs are kind of, I feel like they're in the same vein.
That is interesting, because that's something I don't hear a whole lot about, certificates of deposit.
But they're up. And so I think, we talk about, just people tightening their belts, but I think there's a lot of unintended consequences and things we don't think about how these high prices and how the Fed raising the interest rate and all of these things are going down. And, that's why I'm particularly interested to see what Dr. Hedlund has to say here in a couple weeks about the housing market, because, I don't know that I'm going to stay in my house forever, but I don't want to move right now, because although I think I could get quite a bit for my house. Where do you go?
Exactly. I'm in the same situation. I've got a car that I'm like, oh my gosh, man, trade-in value right now on this thing is incredible. So I trade it in, but then what am I going to drive? I'm going to have to go buy another car that's...
Yeah, and how are the markets impacted if people are suddenly not investing in small businesses or in the market itself and stashing their money in other products like CDs, whereas before those were almost completely ignored?
And we look, by the way, this inflation stuff, this is not conservative BS talking points. Let's look at Missouri inflation, transportation, compared to January the 20th of 2021. On average, people spend about $133 a month. Now it's $262 a month just here. In Missouri. We might look at some more of these Missouri-specific numbers when it comes to inflation. Yeah, maybe we'll do that like 5 minutes from now here on the show.
familiar to what happened in Germany, which is a bunch of citizens. Adolf Hitler gets a third of the vote. Nobody thought it could happen there. They kind of went along because they said he was going to solve the economy and fix inflation.
Yeah, that's right.
You can hear those sorts of things. And then, lo and behold, a few years later, they lost their democracy, and they're all like, how'd that happen here?
Holy cow, man. Do you ever listen or poke in and see what other national news outlets are doing? And I don't know if you have one that you follow, if it's Fox, if it's Newsmax, One American News, whatever it is, if you have one. I'm always a big fan because every morning I get on to CNN, USA Today, MSNBC.com, and I try to flip through the channels because I'm just curious to what they're saying. And that's what they were saying. I flipped in last night, Matthew Dowd, who's a talking head on MSNBC. Smart people like us, like James Garfield, famous Democrat strategist, famously uttered those words 30 years ago. It's the economy, stupid. This guy, so that's what MSNBC is saying about you smart people. He's saying, well, you remember back in the 20s in Germany, the whole thing, they voted on the economy, and guess what happened? They lost their democracy. They're comparing us to Hitler and swastikas. It's the best they got. My goodness. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Producer Hannah is here.
Hello.
Mr. Brian Houseworth is there. There's Mr. John Marsh. Man, that stuff, they go stark with this stuff sometimes. I mean, They really do, and I'm like, I don't know if people ever get a chance to watch some of these things that are happening on the TV, but because here's what I used to love. We used to have Claire McCaskill when she was a sitting U.S. senator. She would come on the show, and people would get mad at us. The only guest we'd have on, they'd get madder about than having Claire on, Roy Blunt. They'd get even more mad if Roy Blunt was on the show. Some of these people, you just don't make them happy. Anyhow, because don't you want to hear what they're saying and what they're thinking? So I always think it's good what they're doing. We also we have people like Nancy Pelosi and New York City Mayor Eric Adams saying, well, crime, we're not really afraid. It's our perception of crime. Nancy Pelosi also saying the economy's not that bad. It's just your perception of things. That's what these... Exactly. You're right. They don't know what it's like to live their life as a regular, ordinary, average American. Welcome to the show, Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Something we can do for you, 874-9390, 874-9390. Getting a bunch of breaking news updates. And here's the other thing I think is fun. Maybe to nobody else, just me. But I get breaking news alerts from CNN and Fox, and from Newsmax, Washington Times, Washington Post.
And sometimes from producer Hannah. So
I always love, number one, when I get all those breaking news updates, how different news outlets are portraying a certain story, or what some outlets consider to be breaking news. For example.
Did you get one about the McRib?
No.
That's where I came in, Stephanie.
Okay.
But I did get one from USA Today. Adidas ends its endorsement deal with Kanye West. So a celebrity loses an endorsement deal? That's breaking news.
Breaking news. Don't care.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about me or the...
Or USA Today for sending out a breaking news alert about Kanye?
Yeah. Brittany Griner will remain in a Russian prison. It's the other breaking news update I just got.
That's significant.
And that's a story. I'm kind of conflicted about that. I'm wondering, hey, wherever you are, that's the law. You follow those laws, right? And if you break that law, you pay those consequences. I keep going back. Was it Michael Fay back in the day? Was he the kid in Singapore? Was vandalizing cars, and his punishment was he got lashed by a cane or something in America. Remember that? And we flipped our lid. Like, you can't do that to that American kid. He's ours. He's American. And whatever country he was in said, well, you're right. He is an American, but he was. Yeah. So I wonder with Brittany Griner, because it seems most of America has been completely disinterested in that story. She's a WNBA player. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I mean, this is not Tom Brady from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who was busted for illegally having weed in Russia. It's Brittany Griner, WNBA. So I don't know if that's why there seems to be a real lack of concern over this story.
This is going to make me sound like a horrible person, but I think there is a little bit of poetic justice here because Brittany Griner is one of the athletes that has been very outspoken about, how horrible America is. And I don't even know how to eloquently say this, but it's like it's worse elsewhere, Brittany. And now she kind of gets to see just how good we do have it here in the States, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's the hottest take of the day, and you don't sound like a horrible person. You are a horrible person.
Hey,
I'm kidding.
At least I admit it.
No, you're exactly right. She complained about America and how crappy it is here. Well, guess what? You get to spend the next 9 years in a Russian prison cell.
Yeah, I kind of get to see it's really not so bad over here. Maybe.
I mean, you think we're going to let her do that? At some point, they were trying to trade her for, actual violent people.
It's like, what, some arms dealer they were thinking about trading her for?
Let's please not do that.
A basketball player for, an international arms dealer. That's a no-brainer. Don't do that.
Yeah, and it is a female basketball player at that.
Oh, Branden.
I'm trying to one-up Hannah on that. That's a beautiful take, Hannah. You're right. Your take there about Brittany Griner trash-talking America.
I don't know. Is that poetic justice? I don't know what the best term for that is, but ironic?
Karma's a real...
Yeah.
Yikes.
All right, welcome to the show. Let's move forward.
Yes, please.
I want to cover this before, because I want to talk about some of these inflation things as they're affecting us here in Missouri since the tragic events of January the 20th of 2021. But I wanted to mention real quick, winners and losers of the week, and I know it's only Tuesday, but that's already, I got my eyes on Friday, 8:35, when we do winners and losers of the week. I want to pick the public school system for finally getting it right. Back in mine and John's day, you go to school and you learn the 3 R's. Arithmetic, writing, and reading. Nowadays, they have it right when they talk about like STEM, science, technology, math, and the other one.
Engineering.
Thank you. And there's a new school in Jefferson City is going STEM. When is this happening, John? So I'm picking current day, modern day educators for getting it right with STEM. And losers of the week will be educators from back in mine and John's day. The 3 R's.
You're picking them for getting it right, yet our test scores are in the toilet. I mean, I don't really care what you call it, but if we're not educating our youth, then I'm not picking anybody for winners. And I'm not faulting teachers because I think parents are equally at fault, and so is the virus, and there's just a lot at play. But the test scores really have me down in the dumps this week. That's true.
And they got worse, and they were bad here in Missouri, too. This is interesting. Face the Nation, which I think was NBC. Maybe CBS. Could have been ABC. One of those three, I'm pretty sure. Face the Nation. Over the weekend, they put together a panel, and they talked to a Democrat voter and an independent voter talking about schools, biggest problem they see in schools.
Woke culture affecting our children. All these elementary schools and middle schools having woke culture pushed on them from the LGBT plus community for sexual identity and gender. We should be pushing the actual school studies, math, social studies, science.
I really would say sex education. I feel like some things, are brought to the children's attention. They wouldn't even think about.
That's a panel of Democrat and independent voters, even the Democrats. Yeah, this is too woke for us. Think about this. You have a shooting in a school here in Missouri yesterday, and one of the big things they focus on is, let's get the transgenders in and do story hours here at the school. Let's let you identify as a chick or a dude, even if you ain't a chick or a dude. Those are the things they're focusing on in schools, and you're right. So when we see these test scores that go down, that decline, and not just go down, I mean, go full-fledged down. Yeah, that's a problem when you're focusing on bringing transgendered storytellers into your classrooms and scores are failing. Yeah, it's a real issue. All right, Stephanie and I have Missouri inflation, some of the things specifically that we wanted to look at. So you understand that this stuff that we're talking about is not BS. These should be real issues that we should see, hopefully, the fruition of 14 days from now. Local, statewide, national. I don't see any reason to vote for, even though I'm friends with some Democratic office holders here in town. There is no reason any of them, absolutely none of them, should be voted for. None of them. And it's nothing against them personally. It's the mindset that got us into the trouble where we are today, talking about a school shooting when they're focusing on transgender story hours. It's me paying $3.58 for a can of Progressive soup. These are real things and how they affect us. Stephanie and I got our hands on some numbers, actually, as they relate to your inflation here in Missouri. So not just national, we're complaining because the economy's bad, but here's how this is affecting you.
Yeah, these numbers come from the FGA, the Foundation for Government Accountability, and are specific to Missouri. Missouri's inflation is at 13.9%, which translates to $742 a month.
Man.
That's incredible.
So to break that down, because people say, well, it's only a little bit more you're paying for gasoline. Well, it's only a little bit more you're paying for milk. Only a little bit more you're paying for insurance or energy. And don't forget property taxes coming up before the end of the year. It's only a little bit. It's only a little bit. It's not that much. It all adds up. So like with what you were just talking about, transportation is up. $262 basically a month on average for Missourians since January the 20th of 2021. Groceries, they're up. All these, so energy costs, basically you're talking $70 to $150. Shelter, $30 to $100. Groceries, $25 to $100. See, all of that stuff adds up to come up with that grand total that we were just telling you about, over $700 a month. That's how this stuff is affecting you.
It's awful, and what they're saying is similar to what Dr. Hedlund was saying, was the way we can get around this or help us return to some state of normal is to start slashing regulations, and specifically it's talking about the REINS Act, which basically says, we kind of got this administrative state that kind of operates on its own without electeds reviewing it, and basically it would bring more things under the umbrella that if the administrative state does something significant that would financially impact businesses and the regulatory scheme, that then they would need congressional approval.
Aaron Hedlund, great conversation this morning. As a matter of fact, featured speaker coming up the day before the election, Monday, the 7th of November, here at the radio station. If you want to go, we still have a few slots open. This is happening at lunchtime. Just get on to our social media.
Mailbag, obviously.
Here's a big old serving of leftovers. Enjoy.
All right, leftovers, things we didn't get time to get to during the show today. One of the big things that we didn't have time for today.
Letters.
The mailbag.
I get
That's what's in leftovers today.
so many letters.
The Wake Up Mid-Missouri mailbag. Minutes ago, producer Hannah Hot Take talking about Brittany Griner. They're just 30 minutes. I haven't followed the story with a whole lot of interest, and I'm wondering why. It's an American in Russia. And I go, maybe here's why. Listen, there's different laws in Illinois than there are in Missouri. If I go to Illinois and break a law, I'm going to be held accountable per Illinois law.
You probably speak from experience, right?
Yes. And if you break the law in Salt Lake City and in Idaho and in Florida or Canada, I have paid legal consequences in all of those areas. So my take is, Brittany, you broke the law there. You take the consequences that are there. We're learning she's not getting out of prison this morning. Hannah's got a super hot take on this, so.
I mean, Brittany Griner is one of the professional athletes that has been really outspoken about how terrible they think our country is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a little bit of poetic justice, a little bit, that she's going to have to see how bad it really is in other countries.
Yeah. What comes around goes around. Karma's a real witch. Whatever name you want to put on it. Yeah, you're right. And people are responding via text at 874-9390. Steve in Hannah says, maybe I'm a horrible person. No, you are not a horrible person.
It just seems like a kind of mean and spiteful thing to think. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
But if it's true, because that's the thing, a lot of people, they get sensitive. Well, I care about this topic, or I care about this issue. This bothers me. Is it your responsibility to be mindful of how other people feel about what you said?
Yes and no. I know that's not the answer you wanted me to say.
Going soft already, man.
Oh, come on.
No.
You know, Yeah. Yeah, Stephanie's been texting the studio line from like different numbers.
I can't believe you're taking that money, my money, straight out of my pocket, into yours.
Yeah, I got called spineless the other day because I said I was going to take the $10,000 in debt relief if I end up getting it. I got called spineless for that.
I don't even recall, but I called it the Obama money, whatever that first-time home buyers money. I mean, if the government's handing out free money.
Oh, in 2008 or 9.
Yeah, I took the Obama money because everyone else was taking it, right?
I've caught flack for saying this too, but I think anyone in my position would take the money.
Well, and I would ask, and
Branden.
Me? Yeah, and I even said, I feel bad about taking this. Ka-ching, ka-ching, as I spent it.
And I get it, because, I mean, I whined about not getting the stimulus money.
Yeah.
I mean, if I wasn't directly benefiting from the student loan relief, I would probably be upset about it, too.
Here's what we've done this morning. We talk about politicians must be if you're making people really happy about something and mad at the same time about something, you must be doing something.
Wake up, Mid-Missouri.
Wake up, Mid-Missouri.
Making people angry.
And happy. We're doing it. Gary Nolan Show is next. See ya.
Bye.